Welcome back to AI True Crime Special Series Mysteries on the Menu, where we delve into the shadowy intersections of food and crime. Today, we explore a bizarre and violent chapter in American agricultural history, a tale that might seem almost unbelievable if it weren't so chillingly true. This is the story of the Artichoke Wars, a conflict that brought together mobsters, farmers, and even a city mayor in a battle for control over one of the world's most unassuming vegetables. Drawing on insights from Chris Garcia's seminal work Food and Crime, we will unravel how the humble artichoke became the focal point of a brutal struggle for power, profit, and dominance. Our story begins in the verdant fields of California's Monterey County, where the climate was perfectly suited to growing artichokes, a vegetable that had been brought to the United States by Italian immigrants. By the early 20th century, artichokes were becoming increasingly popular, especially in East Coast cities like New York, where Italian cuisine was gaining a foothold. What might have remained a simple agricultural enterprise soon attracted the attention of a more sinister force, organized crime. During the 1920s, the artichoke industry was flourishing. Farmers in California were cultivating this spiky, green vegetable with great success, shipping their harvests across the country to meet the growing demand. However, the profitability of this trade did not go unnoticed by the criminal underworld. Ciro Terranova, a notorious figure in the New York Mafia, saw an opportunity to exploit the artichoke market for his own gain. Known as the Artichoke King, Terranova was an associate of the Morello crime family, one of the most powerful and feared mafia organizations in the United States at that time. Terranova's entry into the artichoke business was anything but benign. He sought to create a monopoly over the artichoke trade on the East Coast, using a combination of intimidation, threats, and outright violence to achieve his goals. The method was simple but effective. Terranova and his associates would approach California growers and distributors, demanding that they sell their artichokes exclusively to him, often at prices far below market value. Those who resisted were met with brutal reprisals. Crops were vandalized, shipments were hijacked, and some growers found themselves the targets of arson attacks. The message was clear: comply or suffer the consequences. This strategy allowed Terranova to control the supply of artichokes, which he then sold at exorbitant prices to retailers and consumers in New York City. By the late 1920s, Terranova's grip on the artichoke trade was nearly absolute. He had established a lucrative racket that funneled enormous profits into the coffers of organized crime, all while squeezing the life out of the legitimate farmers who had grown the crop. The situation for the California growers was dire. Many were small, independent farmers with little recourse against the powerful and violent forces arrayed against them. The Artichoke Wars, as this period came to be known, saw escalating tensions between the mob and the growers. One of the most infamous incidents occurred in 1929, when a group of masked men raided a warehouse in Castroville, California, the epicenter of artichoke production in the United States. Under the cover of night, they destroyed a massive shipment of artichokes, hacking and slashing the vegetables in an act of economic sabotage that left the local community reeling. Such acts of violence and intimidation were not isolated incidents. Truck drivers and railroad workers transporting artichokes from California to the East Coast were often coerced into compliance with the mob's demands, either through bribes or threats of harm. The entire supply chain was compromised, with Terranova's influence extending from the fields of Monterey County to the bustling markets of New York City. The law, both local and federal, seemed powerless to stop the mob's control of the artichoke trade. Law enforcement in California was often either outmatched or outright intimidated by the mob's reach. Meanwhile, on the East Coast, the profits generated from the artichoke racket helped to finance other criminal enterprises, further entrenching the mafia's power. The turning point in the Artichoke Wars came not from the growers or the police, but from an unlikely source: Fiorello LaGuardia, the fiery and reform-minded mayor of New York City. LaGuardia, a man who had built his political career on fighting corruption and organized crime, decided to take a stand against the mob's control of the artichoke trade. In 1935, in a move that shocked the city and sent ripples across the country, LaGuardia declared artichokes outlawed in New York City. For a brief period, the sale and distribution of artichokes were banned in the city, a drastic measure intended to break the mob's stranglehold on the market. LaGuardia's ban on artichokes was a bold and unprecedented move. It was also largely symbolic, as the ban lasted only about a week before it was lifted under pressure from various quarters, including restaurateurs and consumers who lamented the loss of one of their favorite vegetables. However, the ban had achieved its intended effect. It brought widespread attention to the issue and put the mob on notice that their activities were under scrutiny. Chris Garcia's Food and Crime notes that LaGuardia's actions, while short-lived, marked the beginning of the end for Terra Nova's artichoke monopoly. The increased public awareness and the renewed efforts of law enforcement to tackle organized crime in the agricultural sector gradually weakened the mob's control. By the late 1930s, the Artichoke Wars had largely come to an end. Terra Nova's influence waned, and the artichoke trade returned to the hands of legitimate farmers and distributors, though not without leaving scars on the industry and the communities involved. The Artichoke Wars are a striking example of how organized crime can infiltrate even the most unexpected industries, turning a simple agricultural product into the center of a violent and dangerous conflict. The story of Ciro Terranova, the farmers of Monterey County, and Fiorello LaGuardia's bold stand against the mob is a reminder that crime can seep into the very fabric of everyday life, affecting everything from the food we eat to the communities we live in. As we wrap up this episode of Mysteries on the Menu, we are left to reflect on the strange and sordid history of the Artichoke Wars. It's a tale that serves as a cautionary reminder of the lengths to which some will go in the pursuit of power and profit, and how even the most humble of vegetables can become the focus of greed, violence, and corruption. Thanks to the work of historians and authors like Chris Garcia, the story of the Artichoke Wars continues to be told, preserving this bizarre chapter in the annals of American crime and food history. Thanks for listening to AI True Crime's Mysteries on the Menu. Next week, we wrap up this series with a massive episode on the famed case of the Burger Chef murders.